Welcome to your Family Health Revolution conversation series with Carla Atherton and friends, where our HFF family comes together not to tell you what you should do, but what you can do. Take charge of your health. You can do this. In fact, you're the only person who can. Hello, this is Carla Atherton, Director of the Healthy Family Formula and host and producer of the Children's Health Summit. And I am here with a new series called Your Family Health Revolution Conversation Series. And I'm so excited to have JennTara Ward, one of my graduates from the Healthy Family Formula Practitioner Training Academy, with me here to unpack some really awesome stuff for you today. This is the conversation that we're going to start off with to launch this program because if we don't have certain shifts in our consciousness, in how we view health, it's really hard to make change. And so we're going to unpack what I mean by that. But I'm so glad to have JennTara here to converse with me on that, with her insight, brilliance, and questions she might have of me, to unpack this all for you and get us rolling on this adventure that we're going to have throughout the summer. So JennTara, I'm going to introduce her right now, and then we'll be able to hear more from her. And JennTara Ward is a practitioner of yoga, body work, and a holistic mama who has been passionate about natural medicine from a young age. She experienced chronic childhood health issues that led her on the path to various types of healing and healers as a young adult. She quickly discovered a strong affinity toward the healing arts, and this impulse inspired her to become a licensed massage therapist, doula, certified yoga instructor, facilitator of embodied transformation, momiopath, and most recently, a certified healthy family formula empowerment coach. She has spent over 2 decades building strong and trusting relationships with students and clients, assisting and guiding them on their healing journey. She is currently living in Santa Fe, New Mexico with her devoted husband, Jason, and thriving 9-year-old son, Isaiah. So welcome to this conversation, JennTara, and I'm excited to be having this with you.
Thank you, Carl. I'm excited to be here.
All right.
Thanks for inviting me.
Pardon me?
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you accepted. So I'm going to introduce the topic, okay? So really quickly here, and then we're just going to get right into the goodness, like to the juiciness of this topic. So our topic is called Fundamental Shifts for Your Health Revolution. And it's sort of like a launch from, it's like the introduction to a series of, I guess, ramblings I have showing up in Brains magazine. Because it's such a fundamental thing to talk about when in relation to your individual health or family health. Like I said when I was just before I introduced JennTara, that I actually wrote a series of articles about it, 12 articles about it, and they're being released in Brains magazine. And the reason for that is that before you embark on something like this, like a fundamental change in your health or wellness or healing and all that kind of thing, there needs to be some kind of movement away from disempowerment. And so anytime I see someone feeling disempowered, they're less likely to be able to pull themselves out of any sort of health challenge. If you are feeling empowered, it is a million times easier, and it's actually maybe even fun. So yeah, really, my ADHD is fun. Oh, my diagnosis of XYZ is fun. Yeah, Carla, you crazy? JennTara's like, she gave me this little look like, is it? Can it be? But yeah, maybe it can be fun. So let's talk about those shifts, starting with maybe a question, JennTara, something that was, like to you was the most important thing that kind of stuck out for you in those discussions we've had during class, relating to this shift, or maybe some of the writings that I've done that you've been digging into as well.
Yeah, so I guess the first question I have for you is, what do you mean by these shifts? Let's talk about just the definition of the shift that you're talking about.
Okay, so you know what I'm going to do? What I'll do first to get us oriented, because people like visuals. Or he's like, I want to see something, because we're going to talk a lot about philosophy here. Like the philosophy of health is like, okay, like how do I make that practical? But what I want to do, I'm going to give you a visual, and this I created for my clients and students and like people that I just wanted to talk about this with. I actually just one morning I created it and I posted it on Facebook, because I have to like show what I'm thinking in this brain of mine. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
let's
share
see.
this with you. Okay, yeah, and let's use this for like just a few minutes here for like to keep us anchored, right? So
Mm-hmm.
shifting into healing. So we have this like idea about what health is, right? So we're a little bit more medicalized in our Western society, and by what I mean by that is that we take a pill if we are ill, and then that pill is supposed to suppress that symptom, and then we move on with life. Yet in that model, we don't really recognize that there is more healing to be had, right there, and that the body is actually brilliant, is always healing if we get out of the way and give it the right inputs. So if we take a pill for an ill, we're actually suppressing that healing process, which is like that shift alone, JennTara, is massive. Like that shift alone, just knowing that our bodies are always healing, it doesn't make mistakes, that we're actually not damaged or broken, that we're going through a healing process. Like just imagine, okay, now I'm going to stop my share just for a second. Just imagine that you have a diagnosis, and knowing that and thinking that there's something wrong with you, how much fear that can actually instill in a person and encourage in a person. And then moving toward the knowing that, okay, I'm going through something right now, my child is going through something right now, I need to support and empower ourselves, get the right information. How different that is in that experience, and how likely the person who is afraid, who is farming out their health to somebody else, how different that experience is to someone who's empowered, taking responsibility for their health, but also using supports when they need them and encouragement with coaches like us. So you see that different, that first shift from getting out of the medical mindset to a more empowered, holistic, intuitive mindset.
Yeah, I like that idea of there's nothing wrong with you. Like that is a powerful, message. Like I think the diagnosis gives us the sense that there's something wrong. And so if we can shift out of that mindset into, wow, this can be a journey, like you just said, that there's something to learn here, that's a more empowering mindset to have than just being labeled with a diagnosis. The other thing that comes up for me when I hear you say that is, instead of like shifting from saying I have an autoimmune disease to I'm living with an autoimmune disease, I think is another way to shift that perspective as well.
Yeah, and even further, okay? So I am experiencing the symptoms related to autoimmunity. And because we don't even really know, and I trust me, I've been all up and down this autoimmune avenue like for years and years and years. And really the conclusion is we don't actually know, or we might even be mistaken about what that is. And so really to focus on less on having a condition or disease, or even labeling something as disease, I've started to shift into saying dis-ease, right? I don't even use
Right.
the word disease
Mhm.
anymore, because if we say disease, we've got these set of circumstances, they're all the same, and all the solutions are the same, and it's actually something wrong with you, and like it's like the disease process, the body's broken, wrong, all that stuff. But if you start saying dis-ease, it's a level of discomfort, it's disharmony, there's something kind of off that we can eat, like we can pull back into harmony, we can actually heal and move on and resolve symptoms rather than covering them up, because that's what we want to do, is we
Right.
want to resolve them. We don't want them to come up in a different way, like we ignored our gut stuff, and then it started to show up in the skin, and then it showed up in behavior, because the body will keep talking to you until you listen. So
Right.
right, yeah.
Right. Another way to say it is the issue is in the tissue. So as a body worker, we, that phrase, the issues in the tissue, that pain is, a symptom of something bigger that's going on inside of you. Could
Exactly.
be it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that the body is always seeking harmony. So those symptoms are just a way, they're like a message to your body, like to come back into harmony and back into balance. Or a symptom that it's, they're a message that it's out of balance. And then the journey is, or the discovery is, how do I bring myself back into balance? Yeah.
Completely. And we could
Yeah.
totally skip over that, like keep talking. We're keep talking now. But for you and I, that seems to be like something that's just like, when you go through like it's sort of like a learning evolution. And it's something that I think about all the time now. It's like a given. But for that one thing you just said, JennTara, for some people listening, it might be like, I never thought about it like that before. So I don't want to glaze over what you just said because it's so profound. Like that, we don't want to glaze over that fact, that the body is in this healing, and when it's talking to us, it's actually just like it's trying to return to harmony because that is the default. So our default
Right.
isn't illness, it isn't disease, and there's nothing like, it doesn't betray us. Our bodies aren't wrong. It's always doing what it needs to do to remain in harmony or return to harmony and to keep us safe. Actually, it's a survival mechanism built in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a built-in
Yeah.
survival mechanism. So when we have
Yeah.
symptoms, instead of saying, I hate this cough, I can't stand feeling like this, I literally can't wait for this to be over. I'm going to take NyQuil, I'm going to take Tylenol, I'm going to take these medications to make my depression, anxiety, all that stop. Yeah, it's not comfortable. Like, that's not comfortable. But that's what dis-ease is. And then the body is trying to, like, go back to this harmonious, hermetic, hermetic is actually like a good stress. It makes you stronger into that state.
Right.
So instead of, it's to, so the shifting there is to observe it, right? To allow it to take place. No, it's not going to be forever. To allow the body to heal itself and to support it with what we know is healthy for us. Like, we could talk all day about diet, lifestyle, rest, exercise. That doesn't mean that stuff goes away and we just eat at McDonald's and say, "Oh, my body's going to keep healing itself." Well, it's going to try, but there are times when we just like really like, there's so many assaults that, it takes a bit of effort on the, to help it out a little bit. But in essence, that is what the body is doing all the time and communicating to us.
Right. And then I want to tie that into yoga and meditation a little bit because it requires a certain discipline to be able to witness the symptoms and
Yes.
to be able to sit with the discomfort, so we have to cultivate that capability to do that, if when we face illness, like how do we, face the illness with more grace and, kindness towards ourselves rather than there's something wrong with us. Like that message itself right there, there's something wrong with us, isn't a very friendly message to give ourselves. So,
No, it's like a war. It's
it's,
war. It's war. It's a
yeah,
war on the self. It's a war, and it's a war within the body. It's a war with the microbes outside of us. It's a war with the cancer cells. And it's not. If we see it that way, there's so much fear, pushing, like self, even like rejection of yourself. My body's not working. I'm upset, or my child isn't
right,
behaving the way I want them to. There's so much strife and suffering that happens with that kind of like a way of viewing it. It's not mentality. I'm not trying to be judgmental in any way, but that way of viewing it, that if we shift into more like, oh, this is actually doing this for me, and I can observe this and help and support, and this child is experiencing this for a reason. I can support and help and all that stuff. So if we shift over there, and I love that you said you're a yogi. And that's not the only entry point, like the body work, the yoga, but there is such, like, we have this in common because I'm also trained as a yoga teacher, so you know this, but just for people watching, JennTara and I share this love of yoga, and it is a much different view or way to look at even discomfort. Like when you practice a yoga asana, you actually you're taught, if you have a good teacher, to observe what your body's experiencing and to breathe into it. Like, right? So we're so used to in the medical model running away. We want to get rid of this. We don't want it. We want to suppress it. But to move into it and breathe into it and not force it, but allow it to open up, to you transition through it. I've seen a lot of transition just in that practice alone of people in a yoga class that they cry and they let these emotions out, or they have like massive healing, and it's not just the yoga itself, but it's the concept you can pull to every area of your life,
Right.
right?
Like it's like training for when you do get sick or when you do get diagnosed with maybe a chronic disease. Like how can I sit with this and not react? How can
Yeah.
I make it a discovery? Like you're saying, like, what is this? I have this sensation inside of me, and, just paying attention to the sensation and the message that it's giving the body rather than trying to push it away.
Yeah. And it takes a lot. Like, I don't know about you, but I started off, I'm like still a doer, I'm a goer. And I really do. I really do a lot of extended time in this space. Like, because I'm like, I can see finances, or my kid has this issue, or, all these things come at us. And knowing that, okay, I got to do my whatever's mental yoga, or my body, I got to take care of my body, whether it's a walk or whatever it is I have to do, that is really helping me to handle all the rest of it and actually move through it with more presence, like you said, grace. And
Mhm.
it changes the outcome exponentially. Like,
Right.
we could
So,
actually
yeah.
be doing all we're supposed to do. We could take all the medications prescribed to us, and we will get nowhere because we are fighting. We're in fight or flight. We're, creating more problems. We're ignoring the things that we're afraid to face that could be uncomfortable. And it's not even facing it. Like, again, if you say facing, it's still like some kind of combat, but it's more like, oh, I see it. I can observe it and I can move through it. And I know this sounds so philosophical and very like mystical in a way, but it's very applicable to all you parents or caregivers out there that say, well, but my, spouse has dementia, or my child has autism, and how does this apply to me, Carla? It completely does. It completely does, because like you said, you have that presence of mind to actually, think about what needs to be done. You're recognizing what might be causing, or a causal factor or contributing factor to what your experience is right now. You're recognizing what the symptoms might mean, and then what you can do about it if you need to do anything at all. And sometimes there are things we need to do, and sometimes we just need to allow it to happen. Like a cold, we don't need to like take a bunch of medications for a cold. And actually, if we take medications when we have a fever, right, we're actually dumbing the body down because the body is doing its job. So things like that, if we have more of a presence of mind, we move through even the big stuff, even the big
Right.
stuff more fully.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I want to move on to something that we talked about before this conversation that stuck with me was it's hard to get better in this medicalized system. So, and I don't know if I use the right words. It's hard to get better, but it's hard to heal, or it's hard to get better in the medicalized system. So can you unpack that a little bit and talk more about kind of the mindset that the modern medical model gives us versus, what is more of what's the shift we need to have there?
Okay. Well, you know
Does
what?
that
This
make
might
sense?
It totally makes sense. So let's do this
Okay.
together. Okay, so I'm going to share this thing with you again, and we'll go back to this because everything on the left-hand column is really kind of in that medical model. And I know we're picking on this medical model, but I think that it's not just the medical model, but it's also like the disempowered model. It's the taking on the world, and like this fight model, the war mentality about and actually the unnatural model, I would say, because like all of these things that we believe in our we tend to be taught in our Western society about health is all sort of like plucking us out of nature, right? Like we're not even part of nature. when we are, having, like, when we are medicalizing our health. So I say we need to return to more natural processes. And that's when I see the most significant. And when we say healing, that's when someone already has something they're completely, dis-ease. But also the most significant shifts in their lives, like where they're like, I am literally living a better life now because of, not because of, but, and just like, and I came through all of these different health challenges, and I had all these heroes journeys, and I have more resilience coming out of it. So like, okay, so in this medical model, let's start with like expectations into possibilities, right? Like, this is the shift that we can have if we move out of that medical model into more of a natural state of wellness, trusting our body's intuition, ancestors, like, how we remained healthy all these, years and years and years in more, in cultures and societies and tribes that were healthy, just intrinsically healthy. So expectations into possibilities, I don't know, let's start there. Like, what do we expect out of, you know our lives or our health? And so instead of having expectations like only being symptom free means I'm healthy, I'm not healthy if I'm not symptom free. I have to shut this up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Mm-hmm.
problem if I have any sort of symptoms or dis-ease. But that's not really the case. It's really, we want to shift into knowing that there's every possibility that we can actually ever even imagine, if we understand,
Mm-hmm.
if we open ourselves up to, like, to, I guess, like, what's the word? Not having these expectations that we're the shoulds, right, that are put on us about what our health should look like.
Yeah, I have a client that was just so inspiring to me. He had a degenerative disease. He has a degenerative disease. He's living with a degenerative disease. He's experiencing it, maybe we should say.
See how you're
And
shifting already, like the shifting that
yeah,
happens. Yeah.
and he was such an inspiration to me always, because he would say, like, if on this journey, on this healing journey, I've met amazing people like you that I wouldn't have met otherwise. It's like the mindset that he had just opened up so many different possibilities and people in his life that he wouldn't have experienced otherwise. So I love that he could see his experience that way.
I love that. That is the best thing
Yes.
ever, because like, okay, so let's say you're just literally linearly focused on, I need to cure my child of ADHD. Okay, so that word cure, that terminology, the ADHD, the diagnosis, the prognosis, that every single assumption that comes with that. So we think there's nothing better, right? Unless this is the only thing that our goal is, right? It's like, this kid
Mm-hmm.
has ADHD. I have to stop the symptoms. Even the cure part actually isn't even an option when you are in the medical mindset, the medical model, because it's always going to be this case. It's because the child is neurotypical or neuroatypical, and we need to just like suppress these symptoms. But if we move into like, well, what are my expectations? It could be that we actually want possibilities of learning what's going on with this child, the possibility of, like you said, new understandings, new relationships, new like awareness of ourselves and others. Our family might even change. The dynamics in the family. We could actually have other people in the family realize certain things that they're doing to perpetuate the situation, or to that they've had in the past, or old traumas could be resolved. That child could end up with zero ADHD symptoms and no label, right? Not even have or they could have a few that remain because they weren't receptive to dietary change, or they weren't ready to, the family wasn't ready for XYZ. It's a complete evolution into possibility. And it's really hard especially if you're a parent or a caregiver or someone yourself, you're experiencing some discomfort. You want it to end, and you're like, I don't really care if I may meet you, JennTara, in this, like, or Carla. I don't care. I don't need to meet you. But you will. You will. Like, if you are open to the
Right.
possibilities, that will happen. And that whole experience will change like exponentially. So, yeah.
Right. It's like doorways into these amazing experiences that maybe you wouldn't normally have
Yeah.
if you didn't have it,
Yeah.
but it's hard to, I can see it's a big shift. It's a
It's
big
huge.
shift.
But then once
Mm-hmm.
it starts to happen, you can't undo it. Like once you start thinking this way, even if you're still pursuing, I don't want my kid to suffer anymore, or my loved one, or myself. Yeah, you totally pursue that. But it's being open to what that means, what healing actually means for you, or health actually means for you, rather than what we believe it to be. Because if we're not meeting those expectations that we set forth that are very actually limiting, we can end up so disempowered and actually suffer because of that, even though the actual situation, the actual life situation, isn't even a bad thing. We just think it is,
Right.
right? We're just thinking it is, because we haven't reached this one linear, very limiting goal. So we don't. It's not that we don't have goals. It's that we open them up to being something that we maybe, even like what Joe Dispenza says, least expect. I love that how he says that. Just
Yeah.
look for it in what you might least expect. And I'm like, oh, you're really challenging me here now. But then I always see it. I always see it.
Right.
So how about we
Yeah.
talk about prison into playground? Um,
Okay.
right? So again, body. Like maybe you can even use one of your clients as, you think of one of your clients here, JennTara, so we can have an example. But prison into playground. So let's look at the body or the mind as a prison, right? So in that medical model, in that sheaved off from nature model that we're currently under or in. I don't want to say under, because I'm never feeling like I'm under anything. I'm choosing to be in it or out of it. So prison or playground. So the body. So if we talk about the body in terms of like autoimmunity, it's attacking itself. Then you're stuck and trapped in this body that's betraying you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that is such a negative connotation for our bodies. It's like negative self. Look at like your experience is negative, instead of seeing it as like, wow, this is my life. This is what I. Maybe not everybody's going to be grateful right off the hops, but some people are. I'm grateful for this opportunity to learn more about myself and to move through this. But also, like, the body is our vehicle, the mind is a vehicle for ourselves to exist. And so let's it be explored and explore it. So we were talking about our yoga, right? Body work.
Mm-hmm.
And like, instead
Mm-hmm.
of saying, oh, I'm so stiff and I'm trapped in this horrible body, you're actually like breathing into the stiffness, into the discomfort, and playing with it. Oh, okay, it changed the next day, and it improved the next day, and I actually move better. I feel better. I'm jumping around. Like, I literally will feel that shift actually, like, within a few days, if I started to let myself go. Like, if I started to just go into this shell of discomfort, and then I'm like, wait, this is I have this body, and it's something that allows me to, I don't know, experience my life, right? So it's so much
Yeah.
different.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Prison into playground. Yes.
Yeah. I can keep going. I mean, I want you to be able to jump in, because I've been told I tend to talk too much, and then people can't actually get a word in. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't know. I have a lot to say, and I'm excited. But so
Well,
just
you
like,
are. I love, you can keep talking. I love listening to you talk, and you have so many good things to
uh,
say. And also I noticed when I was listening to your podcast the other day, you have a nice voice too. So that's a bonus as well. So
thank you. Well, love you.
yes,
Okay, so but just so
yes.
you know, just like I want you to just tell me, like, you can say, "Hey, Carla, shh, I'm talking." Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so we don't have to do everyone
I
and
mean,
unpack.
I can comment on the prison and the playground too, in terms of the yoga. Like I always, when we have an injury in yoga, I kind of like getting an injury, because I'm like, oh, I can learn about it now. I get to figure out what this does. Or, I mean, not that the injuries always come from yoga, but from any other part of my life, I usually use the yoga to heal whatever the injury is. But it's such a cool opportunity to, like, learn about this muscle and this bone, and what could I do differently? So for me, it's a playground when I
Yes.
experience an injury, and I try to encourage students to have that same mindset as well.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And yeah, I was gonna add something, but it's escaped me, so that's okay. It might come back to me later. But and actually, at first, you're not thinking that, but when you start to do that kind of, when you start thinking that way, just a little bit, that little seed is planted. You can't help but be curious. It brings out the curiosity because that's part of life. Like, so we could take, our like our health and separate it from life itself, but you can't. Like, this is what the problem is. We're trying to take health and put it into a different category of hospitals and medical visits, and it's not. You can't do that. You can't separate the body from the mind, the spirit, the community, the environment, the earth, the cosmos, the
Right.
universe. Like, they're all one. And so when we
That's
start
the
doing that,
shift right
that's
there.
the
Yeah,
shift
that's the
right
shift.
there.
Yes. Going from
Yes.
this myopic, like, hospital, medical, pharmaceutical model to like everything's connected, and this little part here is affecting my mind or whatever, so it's
Yes.
all
Yes.
connected. Yes, I love how you just laid out all those layers. Yes, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. And that's the journey too, right? To bring all these parts back together, to remember our interconnectedness, and that we
Ooh.
are one.
JennTara, you just hit the okay. This should actually be called shift into wholeness, right?
Yeah,
Not healing, wholeness.
yeah,
Because healing is
yes.
part of wholeness. But it was never really the right word because it's like, wait, but it's always saying that shifting into, like, something out of something bad into something good, something broken into something like, to where you need to heal from something that we're always being damaged. Well, yeah, I mean, we bang our knees and our body's always healing that. And then we encounter this and our body's always healing that. And there's always this busy work of healing. But I think maybe the bigger picture is shifting into wholeness. And this is just like a little part of it. Your experience of your physical ailment or your mental health, diagnosis, all that stuff is part of that process of shifting into wholeness. It's a life process, not just a
It
medical
is. It's like
condition.
a big. I heard Glennon Doyle's sister was talking this week about gun violence and changing gun violence, and that we wanted to have stuff happen right away, but she talked about change in terms of history, and it's over this long arc. That
Mm,
change happens, could be over 100 years. And I think, we can have quick shifts in our body. We can have miraculous healings, but we can also, that could also be a long arc of our life too, that, these that we're healing, coming back to wholeness. Yeah. Throughout our
love
whole
it.
life, and all these things, our journey is whatever the diseases that come up or the symptoms that come up that they want to show us. They want to point us in a certain direction, like, go here now, this is the next stage to your healing
Mm,
process, or your wholeness.
wholeness for sure. I love that. So
Yeah.
good. It's so good. Okay, I might have to change this infographic. I might, because this is
Well,
this
you
is
have it down here, singularity into wholeness.
yeah. I
Let's talk about that
do.
one.
I do. I do. Okay, so yeah. Okay, singularity into wholeness. That's the whole. That's whole. Let's. How many times can we say whole in one? Go. But into wholeness. Yeah, because we can. So this is like returning to connection with self and others, right? So we think like, and there's so many things I could say about that in our how we live. Is our families are pretty
Oh
fragmented.
yeah.
We don't live in, like, in at least in Western culture, and what some people do, but very few people live with, like, the multi-generational home, or even like multi-generational involvement in the child rearing or in the care of the elders, and everything tends to be systemized in this system, like, our care
Mm-hmm.
homes, and it's not to judge people who have turned to those supports. It's because we have become increasingly reliant on them because we're told we can't do it otherwise. And sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
can't because with a capitalist society, it's like it's so hard financially to hold everything up. But then we see,
Mm-hmm.
so that's only one example. Like, singularity into wholeness also is like sheaving off the body into parts, you know? Like the brain doctor, you know, neurologist deals with the brain, and the nephrologist deals with the kidneys, and, you know, the, I don't know, podiatrist deals with the feet, whatever. So, you know, there's all these different disciplines. And it's like that what we did in class, JennTara. We talked about the whole elephant. And it's like everybody's got a blindfold on, touching, this is the tail, this is the back, this is the rump, you know, this is the leg, this is the trunk. And nobody's got the whole picture because everything is sheaved off into little parts and pieces. When we need to return to wholeness, because we know that the hip bone's connected to the leg bone, you know, all that, like everything's connected. Everything's connected, like I said before, you know, mind, body, spirit, like, you know, ancestors, family, connection, like environment, all that is us. And it all matters. So, so moving away from thinking we're alone, right, into a tribe, a
Right.
community, from insecurity to safety, right? So I say fear into gratitude, right? Like if we move from singularity into wholeness, all these other things start to shift as well, right? So fear, if we're more in fear if we, because we are built to survive, like and so fear is actually just an emotion that tells us there's danger, right? Or there's unknown, which could be dangerous. Like we fear like what we don't know, actually more so than anything. I don't know what's going to happen to me if I don't take this medication. I don't know what my future is going to hold if I don't, you know, do what I should do or what I was told to do, or I'm going to, there's something out there that I should be fearful of, like these bugs and bacteria and all these different things that are going to hurt me, which is basically we should talk about that. We're not going to talk about that today, but that's something
Right.
that, you know, is very very pervasive.
That's another shift.
It's another shift, right? Another
Yeah.
understanding of what all these microbes, what their purpose is. So with fear
Right.
into gratitude, right? So like I'm grateful for these experiences, and I don't want to be afraid of them. I want to actually be grateful for, if you actually really, if you have love and gratitude, it's really hard for that to be in the same space as fear and doubt and hate. If you have those, if you cultivate them purposefully, even with your kids sitting down being grateful, you know, it's like I laugh all the time. I had a dissected carotid artery, and like 4 or 5 years ago, you've probably heard that story. And we laughed like a lot during that journey, because my son was like, "You look like a cartoon character," because my eye was like partly closed, and one pupil was bigger than the other. It was like crazy, and we just laughed. And I was so grateful to be there. I still had joy. I would look at things like, instead of like catastrophizing, which I can do, by the way, catastrophizing a situation, it was more like, I'm like, I am making a big deal out of this, and yeah, I could have died, but why do I want to keep thinking about that? Like, why wouldn't I move on? Because I didn't die. And if I did die, well, I have other ideas about what death is anyway, but I didn't, and I'm here, and my body works, and I, you know, all that stuff. It's so much different. I could focus on all this stuff that's not finished outside of my window, or I could look at the horizon, you know, at the beautiful trees. I could look at that, or I could look at that.
Yeah, we have to look for the good.
That
We have
too.
to look for the good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should I keep going?
I want to say another thing about just back to the wholeness, and what I've been really contemplating lately as a shift too is we have to heal. Like healing happens, not we have to, but it's helpful to have community to heal with. So to find, you know, you are the company you keep. So find like-minded people to be on this journey with. If we're only surrounded by, you know, doctors and the modern medical model, you know, we're only going to get a certain part of the picture. So if we can like expand our community and have different reflections and different mirrors, I think that's super important on this journey as well too.
Completely.
You know, find like-minded people that support you on your journey.
Yeah, and we can have compassion for the people, like I call them nays, or the naysayers. I'm like, don't listen, nays, because they are on their own journey too, and they're also, it's really about what they can't do, or feel they can't do. It's about their limitations, not yours. And so we can move on without feeling judgmental or battling or saying you're wrong, I'm right, you know, you're stupid because you don't think that we can heal from this, because I know we can. Like, we can really take on a pretty bad negative mindset even with these shifts we're thinking, because we can say I'm better than, or, and I don't want to pick on doctors at all either, and you're totally not either. It's just we need to know that there are specific things that specific, you know, professions are there to do. Like, if I want my arm sewn off, I've always said I'm going to a doctor. I'm going to the ER. I'm not like, you know, trying to think of possibilities. And I mean, I want someone to still sew it back on, okay? But,
Yeah.
you know, we have to know, like, understand that we're all people, that there is no authority that is more important than us in our own health, that we know. And if we listen to our bodies, if we move out of this whole disempowered model into an empowered model of possibility, playground, gratitude, curiosity, love, allowance, right? Instead of forcing. Like, what is recognizing what we do have, what we can work with, what we are blessed with, that we reflect. If we become that's when we become the creator, right? Not the victim of things that happen to us. Like, I could sit there and be a victim all day, JennTara. It's not going to get me anywhere. And I've done it before. I'm like, wham, this person was mean to me. And, you know, my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. My kids have had depression. I've had a dissected carotid artery. You know, my business, you know, was falling apart. Oh, my husband, blah, blah, blah. Like, I could say I grew up in a home that was, you know, lots of addiction, and I didn't have safety. And yeah, I'm going to recognize that, and I'm going to see what I did and my power and all that, and empower myself further with all kinds of things, that working through forgiveness and awareness and allowance and becoming more the creator of my future rather than the victim of my past, right?
Yes. Yeah. And and I hear like that takes a lot of responsibility. Like, we have to take responsibility for ourselves and our own healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other thing I want to mention, JennTara, and let's talk about this for like the last minute, and because we're nearing the end of our conversation. It's so fun. But this last two things of I can't into I can, and then even further, because if people say I will, that's great, and you're partway there when you're saying I will do this. You know, you can't tell me I can't. But because it's not, and again, we're going to hear those messages in our society all the time. You can't do that. That's not possible, et cetera, et cetera. Now, but you can say that next step is I will, but then moving into I am, because I will is always tomorrow. Like, it never happens. I will do it, but that never happens. So I'm doing it right now. That's the only time that shift and change happens, is if you actually do it now. Like, you start.
Uh-huh.
And it doesn't have to
Uh-huh.
be huge. This shift in how we're thinking, like what we're talking about today, that will domino into everything, you know, where you're just taking action left, right, and center without even planning to. It's like, oh, okay, of course I can do this, right?
Yeah. And I want to go back to your article, because you talked about in your article that I think you used the words like cleaning off the dust off the mirror.
Yeah, the grime.
What did you
Mhm.
say?
I don't know if it was
What
grime, but
was
I
the
should
word?
have used the word grime. But yeah, cleaning off the glass. Yeah.
Cleaning off the glass. Yeah. It's like, you know, that to me is cleaning off the glass. So it's like cleaning off the I can't, or I don't know how, or I'm not good enough. You know, it's like that's the dirt on the glass. But once you clean that dirt off, you can get to more of those empowering places of I am, and I can do it, and I know how to do it. You know,
Yeah.
does that make sense? Like,
It does.
we get clouded, and we think we can't do it, but we have to kind of just clear the dust a little bit and remember who we are, and that
I
we can
love
do
that you
it.
said that. I love that you said that, because it's like there are two levels there. It's like it's more than just being like what's Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live, where he's looking in the mirror and he's like doing affirmations, like, I can do this, people love me. But that's actually, you don't really necessarily believe it, but we still have to kind of keep doing that to get rid of those messages that are keep telling us we can't. But
yeah, we have to peel back the layers, like the layers that the medical model gives us, like that, you know, you're stuck in this diagnosis. No, I have to clear that off.
No.
You know,
I reject that. Yeah. But it's also what you said, it's more than that. It's a remembering that you are already, your body's already healing. Your body's already brilliant. You don't have to believe for it to be so.
Right.
It
You
is
already are.
So. It's already so. You just have to remember, and then you can experience it because you're like, oh, of course. Oh my goodness. I actually just turned off my ringer thinking that my phone might ring, but I think I actually just turned it back on instead of off. Okay. Isn't that funny? I predicted that was going to happen. Yeah.
That's okay. That's our bell. I think I think we did it. We got we got to the essence of it.
Juicy. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, JennTara.
Yeah. Yeah, and just that last one, the last point I had is you have the capability to be vital, and you are always self-healing. So that's the essence of what I think you just said, you know, that we're already perfect. We're self-healing. Our bodies know what to do. We just have to remember.
We just have to remember. Love it. Thanks so much for unpacking this with me, JennTara. And I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation. Get ready for more because we have 19 more. This is only one of 20 conversations that you'll get to enjoy throughout the event. And have yourself a wonderful day. Thanks again, JennTara. This was lovely. Namaste to you.
Thank you. Namaste.